Welcome back to this episode of the 260. We are diving into what happens after the fire. We are joined today by two fire investigators from Fort Wayne Fire Department, Chief McCurdy and Mark Litwinko. In this episode, we are discussing how to become an investigator, how to detect foul play, and how often arson is really behind the scenes. Let's dive in.
So I came out in 1990, worked 10 years at Station 1 as a private. I became an officer, a captain, did 7 years. Along with that, I was a diver for 12 years, and then I was the SORT team leader for 23 years. I got moved to 10s, and I worked there 7 years as a captain, and then I came to arson. And I've been here since full-time since 2016. Started in 2013 as a backup SORT for 23 years, diver for 12. Aerial support unit.
Oh.
Drone pilots.
Oh.
It's pretty techie.
Yeah.
Probably shouldn't talk about that.
So all investigators are drone pilots, but you're a pilot.
Oh,
He's an actual pilot.
Oh, you
that
fly
is true,
planes too.
Yeah, I did that part-time. That's my part-time job.
Do you have a plane?
Yeah.
I'm starting to regret going to paramedic school. I feel like I could have done so many other things.
Perfectly timed, yes. She goes, you have a plane? Your answer, he goes, you're right, yeah. I'm like, no, he doesn't have
He doesn't have a plane.
No, I don't have a plane.
I cannot confirm.
I flew other people's planes. Make money to fly other people's planes, and then you have less headaches.
Is that kind of like lakes? Like you don't want the lake, you want the friend with the lake kind
Exactly.
of thing?
And swing pools.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right, so let's get into this. So, what is the process in becoming an investigator?
So the process would be to let an investigator know, send an email to me, enroll in what we call it the backup program. And the backup program is all very tribal as far as like we have Excel sheets of things that we think are important for the backups to know. And then we just start checking boxes, but it just takes a super long time to get everybody through. While we're passing on that kind of information, once you let us know that you wanted to be here, then we'll make arrangements to get you here, a couple times a month. And then we start passing on this information, but paralleling that, you be getting your Department of Homeland Security certification. So investigator 1. So you got to find a class, enroll, and pass, and then you have that certificate. It's kind of strange too, like that's all on you. The city doesn't pay for that. The department doesn't pay for it. That's kind of like you proved to us you want to be here by getting that certification and then coming in. Once you get the cert and you've gone through all of the little check boxes that we have for all the different topics that you need to know to be here, then we start concentrating on fires, report writing. So a backup would go to a fire with an investigator and watch. And then after a couple of fires, they start being asked, where do you think was the point of origin, that kind of thing. And then as they gain more experience and more competence, right around the 10 to 15 fire mark, then we start saying, you're doing it all. We're not doing anything. What do you think? And then if they're right on with what we think it is, then they kind of get cleared to ride the car. So when somebody's off on vacation, we need somebody to fill in on a hire back. It's kind of like a qualified firefighter, if you know that term, for riding out for the officers and stuff. So then you get to that car status where you're riding. We have backups are all in all different levels of training. We have backups that have been here for 4 days and have only been briefed on a couple of topics. And then we've got other backups that are filling in full time while, like right now, we have 2 guys in the academy to be full-time investigators in the police academy. And so we have 2 backups filling the 24-hour spot to keep the division going. That's kind of an overview of it. So to summarize, you send an email and then you're brought up 4 to 8 hours at a time. We brief you on various topics paralleling that, you're working on getting your Indiana Department of Homeland Security Investigator 1 cert. Once you have that and you've gone through, it's roughly about 10 to 15 fires, people start really picking up what they're doing. Then we start working you into the mix as far as riding the car. But it's very much a layering process. And it's very hard to expedite it because we're waiting on fires to come in. You can talk about fires all day, but until you go there and see it and put the pieces together and come up with the correct answer, we don't really know if you're getting it.
Difficult to simulate.
It's very difficult to simulate. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then to get to the full-time status, right, I think is where you want to is, so the backup program is kind of like your stepping stone to move into what would be considered a full-time investigator. That is your everyday job as you come to work and you're an investigator. It's unique because our division's so small and there's not a great deal of turnover. The last couple of years have probably been the most turnover in probably 10 years. I came on 4 years ago, and now one of our investigators getting ready to retire, and we added a position. We increased our program by one person as well. And so that's why we were allowed to have 2 in the police academy. So, you got to be in combat. You got to have 5 years as a combat firefighter. You have to be a backup investigator as well. And so that idea that you want to be a full-time investigator is kind of one of those things, it's not an overnight decision. Hey, we're doing a lieutenant's exam because we're wanting to hire lieutenants by the end of the year. You go test and maybe you're going to be a lieutenant within the next 6 months. There's a little bit of career planning, I guess, that has to go into it and waiting for the opportunity to present itself. And then once it does, it's quite a process then. So as you know, all full-time investigators are law enforcement officers through the City of Fort Wayne Police Department. And so as a career firefighter who's already gone through one fire academy for 23 weeks, you suddenly find yourself sitting in the police academy for another 23 weeks. And so myself, Chief McCurdy, we went through it 46 years old. We probably came on with maybe the most time in combat. I had about 18 years, 17 years on. You were a little over 20, right, when you went into the division. But Cruzy's in the police academy now. He's got 20 plus on. And then Luna's probably one of the younger ones that's come through. He's only got 7 years on the department. And so he lucked out and was able to fall into that. So yeah, it is a huge commitment that we ask of them then to you want to be a full-time investigator. You checked all the boxes. We kind of agree that we interview, just like anything else, we interview you and you do a chief's interview and then you do a panel interview with us as investigators. And then you go with Chief Leahy and do another interview. And if you're selected, you now have to commit to this 23 weeks of a totally different lifestyle you're completely separated from the fire department for 23 weeks. You're going to go learn to be a cop and we don't want to see you for 23 weeks. And you report to them, you're a police officer. And not only that, you're a recruit police officer. So you're going through all of that mental game as much as the book work and the physical game. You're going through all of that mental that these 21-year-olds across the hall from us right now are going through. And now we got a 46-year-old in there, and somebody's got 7 years on as well. I think who knows, maybe in his 30s, 32 or something like that. Yeah. And so it is a commitment to get to this. And then once you're in it, yes, we are firefighters because we work for the fire department, but we are very much more law enforcement than fire department. I mean, it's probably like a 95% of our time is law enforcement oriented, with 5% of our time being firefighter oriented, meaning simply because we go into fire stations and we still have to be accountable for all the continuing education that comes with it. But this job then takes a shift. So I always tell people it's kind of one of the most unique positions within the city, whether police or fire, is because we are doing both. And I jokingly say I probably have one of the better jobs in the city. It's I'm a Fort Wayne police officer for the Fort Wayne Fire Department. And it's I kind of fill the whole public safety.
Yeah, you're an advanced EMT, you're a firefighter, and you're a cop.
It's a hat trick of public safety.
Many hats. There's a duality to that. That's really cool. I remember when I learned, I was ignorant. I had no idea really what a fire investigator, what that entailed. I had no idea. And I think that's why we wanted you guys on, because I think most people have no idea how difficult but important your job is.
Yeah.
And like you talked about, you're asking a tremendous commitment from people. And I mean,
I don't know how people
awesome.
Come to the conclusion that they want to be an investigator. I don't even know if I can remember, because it's
you just wanted to be tortured again.
Why did I decide to do this?
But it's very much when we walk into the police academy for in-service, or we show up on a scene with police officers, they're like, oh, the fire guys are here. And when we walk into a fire station, they're like, the cops are here. Like, nobody wants us. So it's really strange. But it is difficult. It is unique.
It's unique. And it's busy too. I'm sure we can get into it. But like, last year alone, we still had a 4-man division. We had 375 investigations between 4 people, between 3 shift investigators and a chief.
Yeah.
So, that's, if you look at our counterparts on the police side, and we just break that down to each one of the shift investigators worked 120 cases. No detective on the police side works 120 cases in a year. It doesn't happen.
Well, and this will be you can put an asterisk beside this, right? But take the homicide division. What's the most homicides you remember ever in Fort Wayne? I remember it being one year we were at 51. I think there's like 24 homicide detectives working in 2 squads, 12 each, working 50 cases. 24 people working 50 cases. He just said we worked 350 cases with 4 people. It's ridiculous. Not every fire is the level of a homicide, right? But there are definitely many fires, 706s or fatalities, or the criminal ones that just take a tremendous amount of time. What's North Anthony going on 3 years? Yeah, one of my first bigger fires I had when I came on, it's still an open investigation. We're 3 years ago, almost a year into it, and so there's been, I can't even tell you the file size that's there. Countless videos, countless interviews, countless warrants were written, and then what's also unique about this whole division, and talking just in how police and fire are different in our investigation. So when a police officer shows up to a crime scene, as a patrol officer, that officer's like, yep, this is absolutely a crime scene and this goes beyond my scope, right? And let's get a detective here. So a detective now shows up to the scene, much like an investigator on a fire would show up to the scene. So that detective gets there, like us as a fire investigator get there and be like, yes, we agree with you. It is a crime scene. We'll take it. Like we've got the investigation. And that detective looks around and starts looking at what they want. Like, there's some evidence there. This is important. There's cameras over there. There's people that need interviews. Mind you, he has a support staff of whatever's on duty that day with him, right? Most of them have a partner at the minimum. And so let's say they've got some evidence that needs collected. Well, they call crime scene, and crime scene shows up and they start collecting evidence. They start taking all their photos. They start doing all that. And then they need warrants written. So they call back to the office and have people start writing warrants for them. And then crime scene goes and collects other things for them. And they have this army of people that show up from different divisions within the police department and start working on this case collectively. So crime scene does what they do. They get all that stuff put together, they analyze it, gives it back to the detective. The other people, digital forensics gets involved. They go get video from different places. They decipher that video. They do all this. They get it back. And so then this detective gets back all this information. They compile their case. They get their witnesses or their suspects, and then they put it out to patrol officers like, hey, we're looking for this person, or warrants division, whatever. And so this whole army of people now have worked on this case. And when it comes to the investigator getting there, as a fire investigator, we get there, we're like, yep, this is a crime. I need to collect evidence, and I need to do this, and I do this. And that investigator, we collect all our own evidence. We collect all of our own video evidence from other places. We do all our own interviews with witnesses. We do all our own warrant service in terms of writing the warrants and getting them to the prosecutors and the judges. And so like we become this 1-man, 2-man show at times, doing everything that on a police crime scene, you might have 7 people involved in the same thing. Now, we do rely on police heavily for their digital forensics units, their crime labs, their warrants, their teams, and helps us, their gang and vice and narcotics and stuff. We work with them a lot in terms of just when we need some extra manpower, we need some guidance on something that maybe gets a little more high level. We certainly have that ability to go to them. But in terms of just what you as an investigator's responsibilities are on the scene, it's pretty amazing. Well, I don't say amazing. There's a complex of what one investigator is responsible for.
Very involved.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Super involved. Like you guys you're spinning a lot of different plates under one circumstance potentially.
And there's only one. And so I'm in a newer position where it's a 40-hour position. So Chief McCurdy and I work Monday through Friday as a 40-hour work week. But those investigators or shift investigators are on. It's just them. And they're the only ones there at night when a fire comes in, on the weekend when a fire comes in. So they only have one. And maybe there's a backup working that day that can go help them out on things, but that's how that backup program kind of kicks in. And, but maybe not. And I've worked plenty of fires all by myself with no other people there to start collecting evidence. And
you have to be very independent, very disciplined, and
very self-motivated.
Yeah. You can't put stuff off. You're the only one that's doing it.
It's not going to get done.
It's not going to get done, if you don't do it.
Yeah, there's no one maybe looking over your shoulder say, hey, if
Right.
you get that done, like that's on you.
Yeah. Become very much more team-oriented in the last few years, and the 40-hour spot has helped that tremendously just in the, 4 months that we've been running it. I was doing all of that before for the last 5 years. I was doing what Mark is doing plus my admin duties. And when I say admin, I mean admin inside the division. Necessarily do admin stuff for the chief, like the people on the 9th floor do. But
I think I understand. It's like just
administrative stuff for the division,
yeah.
Making sure we have supplies and stuff like that. So like I was doing all of the backup or the partner type work and doing stuff, when somebody'd have a fire on Monday, doing stuff on Tuesday and Wednesday. So when they came back in Thursday, we didn't drop the ball, and let stuff fall away. Even with that and having the new 40-hour spot, I did a white paper for the chief not so long ago. He wanted to know how many open cases there were. And I went back through just in the 6 years that I had been the chief, and we're at like 200.
Open cases?
They could be considered open cases, right? They're not necessarily being worked. We call them inactive. So we'll work a case until there's no more data coming in and no more tips coming in, and there's not really anything we can do. And we'll work that until it becomes inactive, but it's not closed because there isn't a final disposition. We don't necessarily know what happened, or we know what happened, but we don't know who did it. And when there's no way to figure out anything else unless somebody comes forward. So they've moved to the inactive file. So there are kind of like cold cases or open cases. We call them inactive, but there's easily 200.
That salon fire you're talking about that I've had, bro, that's a great example of that. Like,
can you guys talk about?
Sure. Without the details on it. So we worked it, right? And we know it's an arson. We know it's an incendiary fire, right? So that's one of the classifications. It was set intentionally. We know that there was an accelerant used there. We have some video surveillance things. And so we have information. We've interviewed people, and we just work it to a point where there's, as Chief said, there's just no more data coming in, and we just can't get any farther. Like, we don't have enough to prosecute someone or even put a warrant out for someone's arrest. And so it kind of would go cold, so to say. And then these other cases don't stop coming in either. So our time kind of gets divided to other things. This particular case, it was almost like this boomerang case. Like, we kind of forget about it. Not to forget about it, but get put back to the back burner, so to say. And then without fail, like 6 months later, something would come in, like out of the blue, someone would have information, or someone got arrested and they're trying to help themselves out, and their cellmate was telling them that they were involved in it, and this. And then so you're like, okay, so do we need to? And then maybe that information was not credible, but then some other video surfaces from somewhere else, and just examples of how then it would die again, and then it would come back again because we maybe have a suspect and now they're involved in something else. We start trailing, and then it's funny how that works. And that's just this ebb and flow of these cases sometimes, that they're not always like, I got a case Monday and I have it solved by Wednesday and I've got somebody in jail that night kind of thing. It's just...
You remember the show, The First 48, the homicide show? It's really like that. You got like 48 hours to assemble all of this data and figure out who did this. If we don't, going to go downhill from there. The further away we get from it, the less people remember, or the less people are willing to help, or some news come along, and so there's just not enough people and enough time to fully exploit all the data that could potentially be there. So some of them fall right into place and they roll, and they kind of fall into your lap, and they're really big cases. They drag on and on and on and on, and they get put in an inactive file because there's just nowhere else to go.
It sounds like, to be an investigator, you need to be patient.
You do have to be patient.
Patient time management is huge. Because like I said, like you'll be working one case and one fire and another fire comes in, and now that's pulling your time as well. But you can't just abandon this other thing, right? You have warrants out on it. You have people that need interviewed, and so that's where, as Chief said, that it is very much a team-oriented approach to this. And if you go back 15, when I came out of the department, there were 2 investigators per shift, so 2 shift investigators and a chief investigator. So almost double the staff of what we currently have, plus a canine, an accelerant canine at the time, right? So you had a little bit more staff to go after. And if you look at their caseload then to our caseload now, there's not a huge difference. They were doing very similar amounts of caseload with double the staff that we have. But I think, and when I look at what they do compared to now, is the amount of, I guess, technology that's available right now. Like, nobody's tracking down cell phones. We weren't doing cell phone warrants and geofence warrants, and nobody had cameras on their houses, and we're getting in DVR systems and pulling camera footage and all that. Like the amount of legwork on the cases, I think, and just the technology side of it has increased. And so we've got less physical manpower resources to do the same amount of work. But I think the case,
we can pull in a lot of data points now. We have license plate reader access. We've got this, that, the other, open source intelligence stuff. We got a lot more data points. Back then, they really only had who they talked to and what they were willing to tell them, and then writing that down. And then they were using film, like actual film, and taking film to the camera shop and having it developed, and it's like you had to be kind of choosy with your pictures and make sure they were right. And then you didn't know if they were right until they came back. And now we're shooting 250, 300 digital photos, and oops, I took a picture of my foot. Doesn't matter. It's in there, like you can take as many as you want.
Yeah.
And fatalities or something like that, we may take way more than that. Like I was talking earlier, we have to keep all the records from the fatal fires. Every fatal fire has to be kept forever. Okay. And so there's photos down there of fatal fires where there's literally 5 photos. There's one of the body, there's one of the crowd, there's one of the garage that caught on fire, there's one of a car sitting out front of there. And it's like, if you were to look at these photos, you'd be like, why did they take that? And like, what does it show? And there's just like no data. Like, it's incredible that they could even figure it out. And, I think knowing what I know now after all this time here, I don't necessarily know that they did. I think they were just making a good hunch. You know what I mean? How could they know? How could they know? It's just like a gut feeling. Unfortunately, though, with the law enforcement aspect of it, we can't go on what we think happened. We might even 98% sure that this guy set this fire, but we cannot prove it. And there's no way we can take that to court. It won't go. So we have to be we have to have all the facts.
What cases do you guys get called out on? Like, what would warrant? Like, would all fires be warranted for you guys to come out at?
We come out to all the 704s. That's automatic. And then, so this is a good point to remind everybody out in the field that there are 5 times you call an investigator. You have to. You don't have a choice. If you don't, you're probably going to get in trouble on some level. But if you don't know where the fire started or why the fire started, you have to call an investigator. That's what we do. That's what we figure out, origin and cause. There's suspicious circumstances or you think that it's criminal in nature, definitely have to call an investigator. If a juvenile is involved in any level, whether they're a witness or whether they're a suspect, you got to call the investigators. There's a little asterisk on that, on why we do that. But there are certain ways that you have to handle kids when they're a suspect. They have different rights than an adult. So there's some different procedures that have to be done. If somebody gets burnt, and there's kind of an asterisk on that as well, because there's a couple of things with the reporting, and that's like on the EMS side. The hospital has to report to the state of Indiana when somebody gets burned. And so we're there to kind of support the ER doc and let them know what the circumstances were surrounding them. But we're also looking for a criminal aspect of that, like if there was some kind of elder abuse or child abuse or something like that. or just a plain assault against somebody with fire. Me and Mark worked a case like that not too long ago that's still active. Guy was assaulted, but the fifth time is a recent one, a recent addition, and that's lithium-ion batteries. Kind of accidentally fell into that because when we have a fire and somebody's stuff gets damaged, we are the first person to go in and say the fire started here and this is why, and that's our opinion. If there's monetary damage, we have to preserve that evidence so that a third party can look at it, like your insurance company, and they come in and they might not agree with us. But if we take what was happening was these lithium-ion batteries, when they burn, they become kind of dangerous. If you have one and it burnt and it flamed up and flared out and you got it put out, it's probably not dangerous now. It's kind of inert. It kind of used all of its energy. But if it's in like a scooter battery or a car battery, it's all just hundreds or thousands of those little tiny cells all in one big box connected together. And one of them lit off, but the other ones on this end are okay, right? Well, if you leave that, then that can heat up the next one and the next one and the next one. Then you can have like this thermal runaway thing, and they can catch on fire again. So they were going to take them and put them someplace safe until they could destroy them without hurting anybody. And I said, you can't do that. That's spoliation. Somebody's going to want to look at that. If that's the cause of the fire and somebody has to pay out all this money to repair something that got damaged by the fire, you've got to give them an opportunity to inspect this battery. And so then it rolled into this giant procedure that we have now for if the battery's damaged by fire, the investigator comes out, it's hauled away by the EOD for the police department, and it's stored at a special facility. The owner has to have the ability to come get it if they want to look at it. It's incredible. It took 14 months to come up with the procedure, and it's probably still not perfect. And then everybody, is like, why are we doing this? That's stupid. It's just a battery. But remember the scooters that everybody ride around downtown that they got rid of? That was what prompted the whole thing, because they had a fire in a battery pack of one of those, caught a whole bunch more on fire. They moved them all to a safe location. They caught on fire again. And then the city leaders and whatnot we got to do something about this. What are we going to do? And then it morphed into what it is. So that's the fifth time. If you have a lithium-ion battery that's been involved in fire, you have to call an investigator. And that's just because we got kind of left holding the bag.
Yeah. And then, like your question was, how often is foul play, right? Not every time an investigator is there is foul play. Obviously, people, carelessness, in juvenile world, the curiosity, you name it. You can imagine how many things can start a fire at home. But you'd be surprised at how many fires we have that are what we would determine foul play, right? Whether they're trying to scam an insurance deal, it was a revenge thing against that was from a domestic kind of thing. Somebody's mad at somebody else or light your house on fire. Like we get a lot of car fires for that exact reason. And so there is quite a bit of foul play, to say.
Yeah.
We have people that, especially this time of year, we have a lot of people that love to set dumpsters on fire for whatever reason. Like it's like nonstop dumpster fire. And they're doing it intentionally. They are walking up and lighting these dumpsters on fire. What their infatuation with that is, what they're wanting to accomplish. Are they mad? Are they trying to hide something? Or are they is there a mental illness involved in that? But regardless of that, arson is always a felony. There's no misdemeanor arson charge, right? But there is certainly a high percentage of foul play involved in some of our fires that we get called to. But I think it's important to know that not every time an investigator is there does that mean that it's because we suspect it to be a criminal. Our job is to determine where it started and how it started, so origin and cause.
Yeah.
And once we do that, then it's okay. Now we try to determine the why. And if the whys aren't matching up from what you tell me, from what you're telling me, and what I see and what video says, now we got to start. That's where the investigation kicks in. And then that's when the criminal side may come out. And that's when we really dive into what we're doing.
I remember sitting at South Post and a guy just walks right up, lights the dumpster on fire, waves at us, smiles, walks away. It was like, God, what do we?
So often
I think it probably feels some days like 50% of the fires we go to are incendiary. There's certainly a high percentage of the undetermined ones that are probably incendiary, but there also is a potential plausible accidental reason for the fire, but we just don't have enough data points. Like I think there's a lot of times we are like, I think somebody set this on fire. It's really the only thing that makes the most sense, but we don't know who it was. And so it gets classified undetermined because there could have been a legitimate reason. We had this house that was being remodeled. It was vacant, so nobody's living in it. And the crew came in, and sometimes with these companies, we have to suspect that maybe they got insurance on the thing, and maybe they had an accident, and now they're going to collect. We had this fire, and it was a Spanish-speaking crew. Nobody spoke English. We had to do this all through interpreters. And they had this fire, and it just didn't make sense. A fire in a place where there shouldn't be fire, and nobody's really talking or telling anything. And then we started asking some better questions, and maybe got a little bit further. But then at one point, I see this sparker, which is what you light a torch with. I'm like, what's that? And they go through the interpreter like it's a sparker for lighting a torch. So I know that. Where's the torch? Well, it's not here. I said, where is it? Well, it's in the van. Okay, so now, right, this is where you don't have to be a 30-year veteran.
Those things should be paired
when's the
together.
last time you used a torch in the house? About 45 minutes before the fire. And like, you're telling me you don't know what's going on. I mean, so what were you using the torch for? Well, there were fleas all throughout the house, so we were burning the fleas because we couldn't even work in here because they're crawling all over us, so we burned the fleas. And they accidentally caught a door on fire, and they thought they put it out. But the only reason I saw that before the sparker was because I walked down the stairs, and there's a door off the hinges leaning against the wall that's burnt. And I go, and all the fire was upstairs. I'm like, when did that get burnt? And they said, well, earlier. We brought it down. It's like, but you can imagine this is all going down in Spanish and coming back in English through an interpreter. And it's like, yeah, at the end of the day, you're burning fleas with a giant propane torch inside a house. You shouldn't be doing that. So
There's no other way.
But
I
for
feel
a
no way
while,
to get
we were like, they're being all cagey and not telling us anything. I think somebody did this on purpose for whatever reason, maybe to collect insurance or something. But no, it was just an accident. And we just weren't asking the questions the right way, But I mean, that was one of my, it was like not funny, haha, but after the fact, it was kind of like funny, haha.
Yeah, it's like now I start asking people, was there fleas involved?
Right.
Were you trying to get rid of something?
Yeah. Were you using a giant propane torch in here for any reason whatsoever?
So, do we have any arsonists in the area? Like, have we ever had like a big
Sure.
arson investigation?
So arsonists are, in my experience, usually one time and done, maybe twice. Serial arsonists, not so much. We have had serial arsonists, and we've had a couple of pretty, if you want to call them famous inside our division, like we all know their names. So we had a female arsonist not too long ago. That was right when I was coming into the division. And that case went about 3.5 years before we finally got enough data points and got on the right trail and put all the dots together. And that person ended up having a pretty exciting story after we figured out who she was. And it was not good for her. Before that, like when I worked down at Station 1, we had a pretty infamous guy who set fires and no kidding, like worked for the circus. And so there would be fires and then there wouldn't be. Then there'd be fires, then there wouldn't be. And that's because he was leaving town to go with the circus. Then he'd come back and in his downtime and light fires. He was pretty famous. I don't know how long they worked his case, but he actually still lives in town and knows all of us. So we'll see him downtown and he'll be like, how you doing, guys? And you remember me? And we're like, yeah, we remember you. And he goes, don't worry, I'm too old to set fires anymore. But we have had serial arsonists.
That's what an arsonist would say.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. But we had a fire in the building he was living in, and of
Yeah.
course he's like the number one person we're looking at.
Yeah, we're like, oh,
And he
so-and-so
made
lives
sure
here.
to find us. And
This
be
guy
like,
lives here in this
it wasn't
building.
me.
It wasn't me
This
this
time.
time.
Yeah. In my experience, arsonists are usually a one-time and done type of thing. They've got some kind of motive for it. like Mark mentioned earlier, the overwhelming number one reason is revenge. Like, I just don't like you, or you did something to me and I'm going to get you back. And that happens. We had a couple, 2-3 years ago, where the chief called me up and he's like, why are we having so many car fires? And we literally had like 56 car fires in a year, one a week. Over half of them easily were incendiary. And I said, this is the new thing. I don't like you and I'm going to burn your car. And we just one after another. That started spreading to houses. We had a really famous case about 6 years ago. There was a love triangle involved, and somebody was mad at somebody else and set the house on fire with the family in there. We were able to finally get enough for an arrest based on a statement he made when he was in jail on the phone. And all the phone calls are recorded. So monitored those phone calls and got basically a confession. But there's usually some kind of overwhelmingly, I think it would be revenge.
Revenge or sometimes it's hiding of another crime. So when car thefts typically ramp up a little bit, we'll start to get more car fires because I steal this car, I find some back street and I torch it. And now I'm leaving. They think it's hiding their crime. So when we get car fires, a lot of times there's some telltale things, right? Most cars don't start on fire. If it's a mechanical or electrical issue, it doesn't start on fire inside of the car, and people aren't over smart to start outside. But it's in a back street somewhere, it's in an unknown alleyway or a parking lot, and all of a sudden the car's on fire. So I think some of our crimes mirror when other crimes are happening. Thefts happen, people, whatever, they're just trying to hide their crime as well. And then I think another big portion of it is sometimes just a domestic. Yeah. Which would also fall into that revenge side of it a bit. In fact, it does for us. Husband and wife mad at each other, or found my spouse cheating and now I'm burning up their clothes, but not thinking it's going to burn our house down. I'm just trying to prove a point. You're still putting others in danger, and in apartments, we have that with apartment buildings. People is like, well, I was mad at somebody, so I lit this stuffed animal on fire in the kitchen and it caught the towel, which then burnt the cabinet. And they put it out. Like, I didn't mean it. Well, you started it, right? It's still a crime because you did it. And you put, how many people live in this building? 40 other people in potential life-threatening danger. And so, some people don't think their actions are criminal in nature. They'll admit that, yes, I did it on purpose because I was just mad at them, or I was trying to prove a point. Well, that's still a crime. There's no misdemeanor, sorry kind of thing.
Those things, revenge, domestics, and then mental deficiencies have really far surpassed all of the other reasons for the fires. Accidental fires, that's why I say I feel like a lot of times, I feel like 50% or more are incendiary, and accidental fires are not really that common. And you kind of see that in smaller departments out in rural areas where there's not as a lot of people, and you don't have the big city issues. They don't make a lot of fires. The volunteer fire departments and stuff, they're making 2-3 fires a year. Accidental fires aren't really that common, and juvenile fires used to be really common, and they kind of go in waves now. During COVID, it was ridiculous. We tripled our juvenile fire setters because kids weren't in school and parents still had to work, and they were largely unsupervised. And we had a huge spike in juvenile fires then, but that's all calmed back down.
And then what we see downtown too, our homeless population has increased downtown because of the new mission they built. It's obviously much nicer. We bring people in. And so I think that's a lot of our, we have fires that they intentionally light it. They're trying, and they'll give us a reason. I was trying to stay warm or something like that. So it's I don't want to say it's justified, but in their mind it's justified why they did that, but they still cause damage to something. So I'm cold. I lit it right here next to this building just to stay warm. And they tell us that. Well, we understand that, but you also torched the whole side of this building that you don't own. And you burnt picnic tables that you don't own to stay warm. It's like, we understand your difficulties and what you're going through, but at the same time, that is a crime to do that. I have someone downtown that I deal with all the time. She likes to burn piles of trash, right? It doesn't mean anything to anybody. It's literally trash she collects, and she does it as a religious spiritual cleansing fire, and she'll do it in back alleys. And so I don't know why, but I seem to always be the one that runs into her, and I'm on a first name basis with her, and it's just like, I get it. but you can't do this, right?
Would you say that there is any commonality between people who do start fires? Like, I don't know, they're of this demographic or this age range or whatever.
She's been in it longer than I have, but the time I've been on it, it spanned all demographics. It spanned all economic statuses.
We were
age
really
ranges.
shocked when we had the female serial arsonist because nobody was looking for this girl who seemed normal. Nobody was looking for her. We're looking for hoodlums and,
when you
gangs and
your serial. So she was what, 60 fires you had?
Oh,
you
yeah.
had-
I thought she was 60.
that she was 60 years old.
Yeah.
So she had 60 incidents that they were able to track her to.
That's a lot.
she was in her,
Wow.
Talk about serial
mid-20s.
So you have to keep a
Mid-20s.
very
Yeah, she was
open
busy.
mind and
Yeah.
try to really reserve
Yeah,
any
you can't. I mean, there's really not any
judgments.
profiling that can happen from
No,
that. Like
yeah,
it expands everything, and you never know. It's all over the city, and
Yeah.
crime zone. Yeah,
You said there's no profiling. So how people come in and they'll be like, hey, we have this serial killer and this is their profile. You can't even do that.
Yeah.
not really. Just because I don't know. We've arrested people that have criminal records, and we've arrested people for arson that was the first time they've had anything. Like when
Yeah.
we're trying to find them, we go
Yeah.
we run them, and there's they have no history. And then the next thing you know, they're doing this for some reason.
I wish it was like that. We call the FBI and tell them what kind of fire we had. And so you're looking for a guy who's 5'9" and 175 pounds, and
Part of me was like, you know what? I don't think the answer. I don't think there is an answer there, but I was kind of hoping there would. That'd be juicy.
I'll tell you the hardest thing, and I remember when I was kind of getting into this and everything, and what Chief told me, look, this is one of the hardest crimes to solve because it's one of the crimes where the fire eats the evidence, right? And so the longer fires go, and the sooner we're called, the sooner we put it out, and the sooner that we can get into the structure and start investigation better because we just preserve all that. But fire, it just eats up everything we need, and so
the criminals, the suspects that do this, they're it's pretty intimate. They're nobody knows. Nobody saw them. Nobody saw them. It didn't get caught on video, and they don't tell anybody. It's you're never going to be able to prove, even if we had somebody in the area the other day, remember? And they're like, well, this person was in the area. It's there's a lot of people in the area, right? There's 250,000 people who live inside the jurisdiction that we have. It could be anybody.
And then you have you guys just had one, the fire comes in at 3:00 in the morning or midnight, right? And by the time when we get in there, start looking, it's this didn't start 10 minutes before somebody called 911. This has been burning for hours. It just was its location, the time of day or night that it happened. Nobody was driving by. And so maybe this crime happened 3 hours before we're called to the scene, and it just has all that time to destroy the evidence that's there.
And that in itself is suspicious. Yeah.
True.
Mm-hmm.
So,
What advice would you give anyone that wants to get into this career?
be a firefighter first.
Yeah, you have to be a firefighter. You have to be a busy station.
I'd say the more experience that you can gain in your career. We both came into this as company officers. I'd been a company officer for almost 11 years before, and a medic, and riding the back seat, and Chief had the same thing. And so I think that we always talk about that has lent us a lot of experience to fall back on, from anything from report writing to dealing with command staff on scene, talking to higher level command, jumping across the hall to the police and just having those relationships. Coming into this without that can be difficult because you just haven't had time to build the relationship with command or high level command or police officers. And so I think, obviously you got to get on the fire department, you got to be a firefighter. All of us come from that rank. And the more experience you can have as a young firefighter, the more that's just going to help in this career. Because this is very unique because like we said, all the things, teamwork and time management and self-efficient. And
I think too, we need people who have lots of experience that have been around the fire department, and you could be on special operations. You could be at busy stations. You could be an officer, not be an officer. We need all of that, but then you're going to come to it later in life, and you got to do this academy. And so another thing is should be physically fit on some level, and that should be part of your lifestyle, because you're going to have to over and over again. I've seen it. Everybody that I've worked with in this division was old. like they've been around a while and they got to come out here to an academy and go through an academy. And this academy is way harder than,
Meaning the police academy.
the police academy is way harder than the fire academy, mentally and physically. It's a lot more challenging, and there's a lot to lose. And that's the other thing. Like, I can remember my classmates when I went through, they're like, you can't get fired. You work for the city already. And it's like, I can get fired. I could fail out of this class. I could not pass criminal law. I could refuse to do push-ups and sit-ups or something because I'm a veteran, and you can't treat me like that. And then I just get somebody else. So I had a lot to lose. And I also didn't want to be the person that would have to go back to 350 brother and sister firefighters and say, I couldn't hack it. I didn't want that. So you got to be well-versed in the fire operations. You got to be like at least interested and inquisitive and want to come in here and try to figure out something that most people don't care about. And that's when I say most people, I'm talking about the firefighters, right? Like, I don't think as a rule we see very many firefighters that go, hey, what happened here? Nobody comes up and asks me. I mean, there's a few, but the overwhelming majority are like, they just want to put water on the fire, do their job, put the stuff away, go back, clean everything up, get ready for the next thing, finish their shift, go home, rest for 2 days, come back and do all that again. They don't really want to know exactly what started the fire and why. So you got to have that person that wants to know that. And I think that's probably the starting point for how a person decides, do I want to be an investigator? Like, do you care about what started the fire? And if they say, yeah, then they might be a person to kind of groom to, well, you think about coming to our division, but then they've got to meet that physical fitness requirement too, because it's hard to go through there at 46. That was difficult. But we see that over and over again because the younger folks they want to be firefighters. That's why they came to the fire department. They didn't go to the police department. And now all of a sudden you're telling them, well, then you got to do this police thing too. And you're going to have to go to another academy. That's been a deal breaker for a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think, and then, the opposite, right? You got to have a good analytical mindset, right? You got to want to be able to want to figure something out. But then you also have to have that ability to, like, you want to know the science of the fire, like, because that's what it's all about. Like, how did this fire started here, but why do the patterns on the wall look like they do? What does that indicate, from colors to charring to all of that? And then the more mechanically minded you are, that will also play a part into that too.
That would definitely be a good.
And so, like, if you're looking like to write job description, you see that on there, good analytical mindset, good mechanical knowledge. And so I think those are those things that, on top of just general fire department knowledge, general fire department operational knowledge, it's kind of like we joked at the beginning, like the difference between trauma and medicine, on the EMS world. Like, trauma is easy. It's like, here's what I see. I'm just going to treat what I see. And the medicine, you really got to dive into it. Well, the arson investigation is very much the paramedicine side of firefighting. Like, you really have to dive into, I know what the problem is, but now I need to know how did this problem present itself? And then it just keeps going from there. So we're like the paramedics of the fire investigative world.
You got to dig, not just eliminate. You got to, well, let's unpack all this.
Oh yeah. It's a layer.
You got to be very even keeled and only take factual stuff in. You can't go on emotion and what you think or want it to be. We recently have one. It's called expectation bias, confirmation bias. Is something that we have to deal with. And that is, we pulled up in front of the house. There's domestic situations there. By looking at the history, there's a gas can in the middle of the street and both parties are gone. What are you thinking right away? Somebody got mad at somebody and set their house on fire. And so that was the expectation. And then we go in and we start looking at all the patterns and the data points, and we start trying to make everything match what I think it is. And you gotta, like, it took another person to come in and look at it and go, well, what about this? Could this have happened? And then that, like, snapped me back to the center. And now the next thing, we go from, this was definitely incendiary, to, well, what happens if the guy leaves and she comes here and comes in and she's smoking a cigarette and she accidentally starts a fire, falls asleep or something, and she wakes up and she tries to put it out, but the fire extinguisher was too small. And then because she's always getting in trouble every time they, have an incident, she just says he's going to think I did this on purpose and then leaves. So now we got an accidental fire that looks incendiary, and you gotta stay in the center. Only take the facts that come in.
Yeah,
right?
keep an open mind.
So you have to be open-minded, and you have to. I know this very well. You have to be okay with being wrong a lot.
I'm married, so yeah.
But
Your wife prepared you
Yes,
for
I've been
that.
prepared for this for 20 years. Yeah, it is very much like that. Like you kind of, and everybody has their own process of what it is,
Mhm.
right? If I come talk to you first and you tell me I was in my kitchen and I was cooking this and it lit on fire, and then I kind of have that mindset going in there, like, okay, it's going to catch fire. And I walk in and it's like, then why is the bathroom on fire? If it's starting, why is the majority of this fire starting in the bathroom? And so now I've got this whole bias going into
Your
it.
valuables are in your car.
Yeah, and so you play this game. It's like, like if I tell you exactly what you're going to see in this picture, I'm going to give you, and then I give you the picture, you're already going to be tainted by what I tell you. And so we have this thing sometimes, like personally, I like to jump in real quick, see what I see inside before I talk to anybody, really, like that's going to give me information from as far as a homeowner, and then go talk to them and find out if what I initially saw matches to what they're telling me. And then we go back in and kind of take another look and then start to play this game of, the whole scientific process we call
That's
it.
another really good way to do it, is to be commonsensical. So to add one more thing to somebody that wants to be an investigator, like you're going to have to be one of those people that everybody thinks has common sense, because people will tell you all sorts of stories and they ain't going to make sense. And then you're going to be like, I just don't, like you said the fire was in the kitchen, like the whole bathroom's burned up. Like, what? That can't be.
It's a giant puzzle. It's got to make it all fit together.
All right, one last thing before I cut you guys off. If you had a book, podcast, or just anything educational recommendation, or someone you'd like to see on the podcast.
But I would say some of the Sean Ryan podcast, one I listen to a lot, and then I listen to Cleared Hot, both ex-Navy SEAL guys, and they have a lot of diversity.
My husband sends me his podcasts every now and
Yeah,
then.
they're long. They're like 5 hours sometimes.
They are long.
I have
I
to
think
do those.
people have name dropped him before.
Yeah, he's good.
I have to do those in 3 settings over workouts and stuff on the treadmill and stuff. Yeah, those are long. Lately, I've been reading a lot of stuff on basically anthropology and archaeology and the peopling of the North American continent. That's pretty interesting. But there's a new book called Origins about that.
Did you read Sapiens? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, yes, that's another one. But the book that I just read was Origins, and it's all about the DNA processing of, when they find different sites, human remains and stuff, and they figure out, like, through the DNA processing that this person couldn't have come from here. They had to come from here, that kind of thing. That was pretty interesting. The peopling of the Americas.
Oh, God.
Thousands of years. It's crazy.
He's not lying. It's once you start biting into that whole concept, like it's a big. There's a lot to unpack.
It does. If you start here, like I started here with Fort Wayne history in like the 1790s and the early 1800s with Native American conflicts and white people fighting, for territory. That leads back to, well, where did those people come from and what did they do before? And then that leads to the next thing you know,
Migration.
you're looking at all the different types of hominids that were walking around in Africa like 300,000 years ago. It's a pretty big wormhole.
Wow.
Origins.
Origins. We'll have to look into it. Well, thank you two for being on and talking to us about this.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
And everyone out there, just remember, leave it better than you found it.